I'm Tim Ventura from AmericanAntiGravity.com, and I'm speaking today with Tom Van Flandern, doctor in astronomy and founder of MetaResearch.org. Well, let's start right out with a bit of background information. You have a PhD in astronomy, and you're the former chief of celestial mechanics at the U.S. Naval Observatory. You're also a research associate at the University of Maryland Physics Department, and you've done consulting work for the Army in making the GPS system more accurate. You've also been honored by an award from the Gravity Research Foundation and done consulting for NASA. That's an impressive resume. Anything additional that you care to provide for us?
Well, in the last decade or so, I've also been involved with Meta Research, the astronomy research organization I helped to found, in response to the problem that funding has dried up for things that compete with mainstream theories, things that are otherwise perfectly acceptable under the rules of science, but if it happens to solve an anomaly but conflict with the mainstream theory, it's no longer supported in the field.
You know, that was actually my second question, because one of the things that attracted me to the Meta Research website was kind of the anomalous science approach that you've taken with it, and it seems like you've put a real passion for these anomalies into writing the website. Now, much of the content can really be described as kind of alternative science, ideas that either conflict with mainstream opinions, or in some cases just plain don't fit within known science. Can you give us a few details about some of the goals and projects that you pursued at Meta Research?
I'd be happy to. We cover everything in space. Our defined area of interest is 40 kilometers and up to infinity. So we have itemized the many problems with the Big Bang Theory. The list is now over 50 problems and growing. And we have discussed and researched extensively the 5 replacement theories that are currently on the table for the origin and nature of the universe, including our own ideas about what is most probable given all the evidence. There's also this gets into questions of the nature and origin of gravity and relativity, an area probably of interest to you and your organization. We have the meta model, is a complete model from first principles to explain the nature of gravitation that I think does a much more intuitively understandable job than the curved space-time ideas that Einstein put forward. And most importantly, it implies that gravity propagation faster than light is perfectly possible, something that hasn't been considered possible up to now. The primeval solar nebula hypothesis for the origin of the solar system we would consider should be replaced by the fission model. The nature of asteroids, comets, and meteorites are better explained by the exploded planet hypothesis. And of course, the Mars anomalies that have attracted so much attention lately, things seen in spacecraft images of Mars that no one expected, and there are a few good explanations for, have led to new ideas about the history and origin of things in the solar system, including possibly the origins of human beings.
Well, I'd like to return to the speed of gravity, and for the audience, I'd like to stress the importance of this next question, because you found a giant flaw in mainstream physics. For several decades now, scientists have been attempting to conduct experiments that demonstrate that gravity travels at the speed of light because they believe that Einstein's speed limit applies to all of the forces and not just electromagnetism. But you've eloquently pointed out that the orbital calculations used to predict planetary orbits are actually based on the assumption of an infinite speed of gravity. This means that if gravity in fact traveled at the speed of light, the Earth's orbit would be unstable. Can you tell me a bit more about the ramifications of this concept?
Yes, you've described it well. If there were a propagation delay for gravity as there is for light, that would cause gravity on orbiting objects to act in such a way that the orbits would be spirals instead of closed ellipses, and that is clearly not seen. There are 6 experiments that have been done that are sensitive to the speed of gravity, and all 6 indicate that gravity cannot possibly be as slow as the speed of light. without contradicting observations, and there are no experiments that indicate otherwise. And the ramifications for that are large. The short story on why it was thought to be impossible is that Einstein's special relativity indicates that anything approaching the speed of light would have time slow down, and time would cease to pass if one tried to move at the speed of light, making it impossible to go any faster than that. And Einstein's special relativity theory is confirmed by 11 independent experiments, so there was great confidence in it. But as a matter of historical fact, Lorentz had a theory a year before Einstein, which has come to be known in modern parlance as Lorentzian relativity. It had the same mathematical formalism, and interestingly enough, it passes the same 11 experiments that special relativity does. But the principal difference of any practical value is that the effects that are predicted from motion are not the effects on time and space, but rather on clocks, the physical operation of clocks and meter sticks, so that just as certain things, when you're trying to propel a jet, say a propeller plane trying to go faster than the speed of sound, can't do it because you're trying to use the atmosphere to push against, and the maximum speed you can do that at is the speed of sound. Well, by analogous reasoning, there are certain kinds of forces that can't push you faster than the speed of light, but other kinds of forces such as gravity that can, and therefore the old proof is really out the window. And an advanced species, much more advanced than us, would surely be aware of this and be using gravitational force modulation for both communication and propulsion.
Oh, absolutely. Well, in contrast to an infinite speed of gravity itself, you're also making some claims about the speed of the high-frequency gravity waves that we're seeing predictions for from many of the STAFE conference papers. Now, from what you've said, these ripples in the gravitational field actually should be traveling at the speed of light. Why do they obey Einstein's speed limit, while gravity itself propagates infinitely faster?
Well, that's an excellent question. The way that our understanding of gravity evolved through the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, physicists came to think of the gravitational field, so-called, and gravitational force as being different manifestations of one phenomenon. But now, in our new modern theories of the nature and origin of gravitation, we can see that they are actually separate phenomena. The gravitational field being sort of like a space-time medium, or in the old terminology, which is a little simpler to understand, a light-carrying medium, the medium in which light waves propagate, and it winds up being shaped by gravitational force, just as our Earth's atmosphere or any gaseous medium around any massive body would be densest at the surface and sparsest at the top because of the way gravity presses it down. And apparently the same is true of this light-carrying medium, in which the wave speeds are the speed of light versus the gravitational force that shapes it, and having a speed that is nearly instantaneous.
Oh, okay. Well, I was browsing through the Meta Research website this morning, and the URL for that online is just www.metaresearch.org, and I'd noticed that you put one of my own pet questions about relativity theory online, a phase shifting in the GPS satellite signals. Now, simply put, since gravity is stronger on the Earth than in space, we'd expect that incoming signals from satellites would have a minor phase shifting as a result. You wrote extensively about this and incorporated your own experience from working closely with these satellites in the past. What can you tell us about this?
Well, you're right about the effect. I assume you are referring to the effect of gravitational potential field on clocks.
Yeah, well, and the Einsteinian time-slowing effect, because the gravitational field is a little bit stronger here on Earth than it would be, 100 miles up in the air, I guess. So
That's quite true. And both motion and the gravitational field have an effect on the rate at which clocks tick. And our most precise clocks, atomic clocks, can easily measure down to a billionth of a second. And with clocks that precise, these effects are no longer tiny. They're only tiny from our perspective. But measured in billionths of a second, the effect you're referring to is about 46,000 billionths of a second. So it's a huge effect compared to the accuracy of the clocks. And so there can be no doubt about the fact that it exists and that it is closely in the amount that is predicted by Einstein's theories. The global positioning system has the interesting feature that the atomic clocks are reset in rate before the launch, before they're launched into orbit, to compensate for the effect on their rates that being in a higher orbit and moving at a fast speed will have on the clocks. And as a result, once they get up into orbit, they tick at the same rate as ground clocks. But that is clearly not their natural behavior if they hadn't been pre-corrected before launch. It's just makes the whole global positioning system much simpler to have all the clocks ticking at the same rate.
Sure.
However, in Einstein's interpretation of special relativity, that wasn't supposed to be possible. Clocks that are in different reference frames are supposed to be intrinsically different rates in ways that you can't tell which is which. But in our case, we certainly can tell, because the global positioning system clocks were corrected only one way, and obviously they would have been ticking much faster if they had not been corrected for these two effects, and they would have seen the Earth clocks then ticking slower. So it is not the completely reciprocal situation that Einstein envisioned, in which each observer sees the other clocks always ticking slower.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a step back from physics and take a look at a little bit of cosmology for a second. You're a proponent of the exploded planet hypothesis, which essentially suggests that the asteroid belt originated from a tremendous cataclysm that actually reduced what was once a planet to what's now a ring of rubble located between Mars and Jupiter. Can you elaborate a bit on this?
I'd be happy to. The asteroid belt, of course, is a ring of tens of thousands of bodies ranging in size from meters up to hundreds of kilometers. The largest of them being about 1,000 kilometers in diameter. They're smaller than planets and most moons, but they're in a belt where there's room for one additional planet if the law of planetary spacing has any validity. Comets are mysterious objects that seem to come from great distances in space, zip into the inner solar system, have glowing tails and comas for weeks or months, and then zip back out again into deep space. And of course, the meteorites are very small rocks in space. In the early 19th century, no one believed that rocks fell from the sky, but we now know they do, and that those streaks of light in the night called shooting stars or meteors are actually objects from space, usually very small in size, that enter our atmosphere and burn up or occasionally reach the ground. When they do, we've been able to study them, and the evidence from all of these objects is really unambiguous, that the origin is from a planet that exploded rather than one that never formed in the first place. However, that theory has been in and out of favor many times over the years, and it's currently out of favor for reasons that have more to do with the personalities and choices of specialization for experts than they have to do with the merits of the various arguments. Some of the strongest pieces of evidence are that we've seen rocket casings that were launched into Earth orbit to put satellites, artificial satellites, in orbit around the Earth. We've seen a few of those explode, and that produces many fragments in Earth orbit. And it was noticed that when the orbits of the small fragments were collected and categorized, so they could keep track of all the debris in Earth orbit, the orbital characteristics of these fragments had certain patterns that arose from the fact they all originated at a common point at a common time. And those characteristics were labeled explosion signatures. And then one of the researchers noticed that the orbits of the asteroids in the asteroid belt had the same patterns, indicating an explosion origin. A traceback of comet orbits indicated the same thing, an origin at a common point at a common time. In the astronomically recent past, that is about 3.2 million years ago, meteorite elements, the study of meteorites also indicates origin from one or more parent bodies that have been involved in a major explosion event. Xenon 129, for example, doesn't arise in nature but requires a horrendous explosion to occur. There is also the black axiom, which says that when the explosion occurred, it sent a wave of black debris out through the solar system, and it takes weeks or months to pass by the more distant planets. So most of them rotate in that time and get coated all over, but those that rotate more slowly than that, such as Saturn's moon Iapetus, that takes 80 days to rotate once, it got coated on only one side. And one of the mysteries to the mainstream about Iapetus is why it's icy bright on one side and coal black on the other. That pattern exists throughout the solar system for these slow rotating bodies. Finally, I should mention that Mars itself was apparently not an original planet, but a moon of the exploded planet. And one of the strongest of about a dozen pieces of evidence that indicate that history is that Mars is saturated with craters on one half and almost craterless, flat and smooth on the other hemisphere. It's like almost like two different planets glued together.
You know, this almost reminds me of the planet, I believe it was Minerva, in James P. Hogan's Inherit the Stars. In his example, the moon was actually, our own moon was actually orbiting what is now the asteroid belt. But it sounds like in your case it was Mars.
That's right, yes. Mars would have been orbiting a parent planet then in that orbit. And the parent planet exploded. Mars would have kept the same face toward it, just as our moon does toward us, and just as all the major moons in the solar system keep the same face toward their parent planets. And then it would have been blasted on just one side and protected from any of the bombardment on the other side. And that is seen, and so are a lot of other effects, such as a major shift in the location of the geographic pole from the extra weight added to one side, loss of some of the atmosphere, and some of the explosion elements I mentioned before.
Well, Mars is actually in my next question also, and one of the reasons is that science fiction writers have been discussing possible artifacts in our solar system for at least the last 50 years. But one of the complaints from mainstream science has been the speed of light that limits ET's ability to reach our solar system. Now, as it sounds like you may be, I'm definitely a firm believer in faster-than-light travel. And, that changes the Drake equation enough to make that a possibility. Now, the new physics really suggests this limitation may not apply, which brings into contrast a mystery that you address online, the face on Cydonia, on Mars. In essence, are you suggesting that this face is artificial? And can you elaborate a bit more on the reasoning behind this conclusion?
Yes, I have concluded that the face is artificial. For many years, I insisted that people not take a position because the evidence wasn't in, and that it was premature to conclude either way. But finally, in 1997, up to that point, there had been 8 tests to distinguish artificial from natural proposed by the scientists, and most of them were indicating artificial was more probable than natural. But in 1997, the last 2 of those tests switched direction from indicating possible natural origin to indicating artificial, and then we had all 8 tests showing an artificial origin. So the scientists who proposed the test don't have any choice but to be intellectually honest and go where the test results take them, whatever their biases or resistance to such a conclusion may be. Since then, some additional tests have been formulated having to do with the high-resolution images, and just to give you the flavor of one of the kinds of tests, if faces are commonly seen in landscapes and in clouds, you can't look at an object, say it looks like a face, and conclude that it's artificial. But you can see something that looks like a face, as we did in the 1976 Viking photographs of the surface of Mars, where we saw something that looked as though it had an eye socket, a nose, and a mouth. And we can say things like, well, if that was intended to portray a humanoid face, then when we see it close up at higher resolution, we'll see secondary facial features, such as eyebrows over the eye socket, iris and or pupils inside the eye socket. The nose will be tapered toward the forehead, and they'll have nostrils at the end of it. The mouth will have parted lips, and so on. So those were predictions a priori. So when you come on something and try and estimate its probability after the fact, that's not statistically significant to a scientist. But when you predict something in advance before you can have any knowledge of it, and then a high-resolution spacecraft camera goes there, photographs it, and shows that these features actually exist, not only exist, the eyebrow, the iris, the nostrils, the lips, but they have the right size, the right shape, the right location, and the right orientation to be an attempt to portray a humanoid face, and there are no other features anywhere on that mesa or anywhere else nearby that we could just pick and choose our mental preconceptions of a face with things that look like this. So the odds against all these things happening by chance and deceiving us are now billions of billions to 1 against, and we therefore conclude that there is now sufficient evidence to have some confidence that this is not of natural or geological origin, but there's been some intelligence involved in that feature and its construction on Mars.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, one of the things that to go back to the speed of gravity question, because I think that was the thing that kind of got me hooked on the Meta Research website. And all of these, I should state that all of these elements are on there. Cydonia, the exploded planet hypothesis, and many of your other scientific works. But in terms of the speed of gravity, I actually found some validation. I'd taken your idea from the speed of gravity page and shopped it around to a few different physicists. And I actually couldn't get a straight answer from anybody until I finally bumped into one person who had cited a Russian experiment from the 1960s. And apparently there was a Russian astronomer who was measuring different energy levels, and he actually found that if he pointed his measuring device, and offhand I can't recall what he was using, if he pointed it directly at the sun, he got a reading, but he also found a reading 8 light minutes in arc before, which would be the true position of the sun. And that really tended to support the hypothesis you put forward about the instantaneous calculations. Because on the one hand, you have the mathematical measurement, which must be correct for the orbits to work, and then it seems like there's also this direct, real-time observational evidence that the Russian scientist had seen. So it seems like we're going to have to seriously revisit relativity theory in order to make these work.
Yes, you're quite right about that, and it's one of the astounding facts about gravity that the sun's light and the sun's gravity do come from different directions against the sky background, because from our perspective, the sun is moving around the sky once a year relative to the star background around us. We're really moving around the sun, but as we're standing here on the Earth looking at the sun, it looks as though it's moving around us, and therefore the sun was in a different place against the star background 8 minutes ago than it is now, and the light from the sun comes from where it was 8 minutes ago, and the gravity comes from where it is now, just as you described in that experiment. So yes, that is one of the indicators that the relativistic interpretation is not correct. Nothing wrong with the theory as such, but the physical interpretation needs work, and we now have several papers and even a whole book out called Pushing Gravity by 20 different authors that shows what the modern interpretation needs to become in order to make sense of all these anomalies.
So that's Pushing Matter is the new book, and then you've also published a book, I think this was a 1993 publication, entitled Dark Matter, Missing Planets, and New Comets. And this is available on the website, right?
Yes, it is. That last is my own book, and it deals with all the subjects we've been talking about and much, much more. Everything about astronomy and puzzles and anomalies that don't fit, and replacement theories that make a whole lot more sense than the ones currently in vogue.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. This has been enlightening and actually a wonderful opportunity to finally get to speak with you about things that I've been putting links to on the website for over 3 years now. So thanks again for your time, and again, it's metaresearch.org at www.metaresearch.org. And thanks again, Tom, and any parting words for the audience?
Well, thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure talking over these things with you, and hope we do it again sometime.
Absolutely.